Okay, there I can is I can explain how Washington was able to push the British out of Boston. So at this time, the British controlled Boston. They were in the city controlling. And the first battle that starts the war we've already talked about. It's called the Lexington, like the Battle of Lexington and Concord, sometimes known as the shot heard around the world. These are the first shots of the American Revolutionary War. And just to clarify, this is the accurate image of Lexington and Concord, where the colonists are scattered and the British are firing on them. And soon after this, the Continental Congress created what was known as the Continental Army and appointed George Washington as the leader. And so George Washington went up to Boston, and the British are in Boston, and the colonists are surrounding Boston. And they both built lots of fortifications, like protection, like ditches and big walls, so that neither side could easily attack each other. Before Washington arrived, though, the colonists were on the top of a hill. And this hill at first was Bunker Hill, but then they moved back to another hill called Breed's Hill. And so the colonists were up on the top of this hill. They dug a trench, and the British charged this hill, trying to drive the colonists out. So this becomes the second major battle. It's a month later, and it's a lot bigger than like the battles of Lexington and Concord. There's a lot more people involved, a lot more people die. The colonists were on top of the hill with little ammunition. And the colonist commander gave them the order. He said, don't fire until you see the whites in their eyes. Basically commanding them, don't fire until the British are right up close. And then so that way you're not wasting any ammo. You're going to shoot them when they're really close. And so the colonists fired on the British. The first time the British went back down the hill, and then the British marched back up. And then the colonists fired on them again, and they went down. And then the third time the British charged. By this time the colonists were pretty much out of ammo. And so they fired and they ran for their lives. And the British were able to technically win the battle. They gained control of the top of the hill, but they had a lot more soldiers die. And it was so it was in a sense it was kind of a loss for them, where a lot more of them died and a lot more of them were injured. And so they got the ground, but it paid a lot higher cost for it. So the British won the battle, but lost a lot of soldiers. A British general, General Clinton, said, "A dear-bought victory. Another such would have ruined us." He's like, "Hey, we can't keep winning like this. This would kill us." Far away, there was a fort called Fort Ticonderoga, and people didn't know that the war had started. So back then, word traveled really slow, right? With no cell phones or internet or instant forms of communication. And so there was a British fort far away called Fort Ticonderoga. And a couple of the colonists left the Boston area and ran to this British fort hundreds of miles away. And they conquered the fort. They easily took over the fort because the British soldiers inside this British fort weren't expecting there to be a war. They didn't know that there was war fighting. And so they had the doors unlocked. The American colonists were able to just walk right in and surround the British soldiers still in bed, basically. And what's valuable from this fort is that there were a bunch of cannons. So the British had tons of supplies, gunpowder and cannons here in this fort. And this fort was conquered by mainly a guy named Benedict Arnold. And Benedict Arnold later became a traitor. He joined the British. But at this point, he was on the American side. And so they were able to get all these cannons from this fort. And this fort, again, was really far away, and it was on the other side of the Appalachian Mountains. And Henry Knox was George Washington, one of his best generals. He went to the fort, had teams of men and oxen, and brought 120,000 tons of these cannons over mountain peaks, over lakes, over rivers, and brought them to Boston. And so you're going to read a story about this. And Washington was able to put these cannons up on a hill that overlooked Boston, and it overlooked Boston Harbor. And so from the top of this hill, George Washington could hit the British, and he could hit all the ships in the harbor, and the harbor and the ships, they couldn't easily hit him. And so this was a big advantage to have all these cannons at the top of this hill. And the British could have fought it out. They could have sent troops, tried to storm the top of this hill again, but they would have lost a lot of lives. And so Washington's actions prompted British General Howe to state, "The rebels did more in one night than my whole army could have done in 1 month." And so Washington placed all these cannons at the top of the hill. And from here, they could hit all the ships in the harbor and all of Boston. And the British decide not to fight it out. They're like, well, we'll just leave Boston. And so the British decided instead to attack New York City because this was the best harbor and it has a lot more centrally located position. Boston, they figured we'll just abandon it. We'll make sure to gain control of all the other lands, and then we can kind of cut Massachusetts off, is what they were thinking. And so that's a little outline of how Washington basically had this big victory where he was able to push the British out of Boston without even firing a shot.